Hey,
Can you hear
can
me?
I? Yeah, can I just test one thing before you let people in?
I think people have already started to join in,
Ah,
but
okay, no worries.
let's do it. Let's do it regardless. What were you thinking?
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to show you I actually figured it out. I can do the presenter view. 1 second.
Okay, that's good.
Let me just.
As long as it's not taking off either of our t-shirts, it's a good experiment.
Yeah, don't worry about
Okay,
that.
well, for everybody who's starting to join in, please stay with us for another 3 to 4 minutes. We'll just let all of the attendees come in. People are pouring in, and in the meantime, it'll be great to know where you all are from. So don't please go ahead and put the city, the country you're from in the chat box. And when you do that, don't forget to select the host. Don't select the everyone option so that everybody can basically see where you're from. Go ahead, Nigel. You were saying something.
And I'll need to share the screen, so we can just wait if you want.
Okay. It's okay. I think we can use this for a dry run
Okay.
as people continue to join in.
Yeah, 1 second. So
Miami,
basically,
Florida,
yeah,
Asheville, North Carolina. That's good.
that good?
Yep. I can see the deck.
Yeah,
Only
full
the deck.
screen. Yeah,
Yep.
that's the idea.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
right.
So it works.
Yeah,
It's alive. That's good.
Oh, I'll turn my camera on too. Hey everyone, how's it going?
Hey, okay, good. Let me just make sure. So Chicago, that's good. We were in Chicago just before the pandemic hit us for IRCE. We wanted to go this time as well, but we skipped it. But we're looking to, do that next year.
Where are your offices located in the US? It's New York, right?
Yeah, correct. Yes, but the team is kind of scattered all over the place right now. With a couple of people in Nashville, so on and so forth.
Yeah, you've got a team in London as well, right? Small.
Yes, small one. Yes,
Not too far from.
they're also traveling. Most of the people there as well are traveling. So
okay, no worries. Shout out to the UK if anyone's joining.
IRCE, the name of the conference in Chicago, Allison, is IRCE, Internet Retailer Conference and Expo. It was actually really good in 2019. It was a massive crowd and it was very insightful. But I'm sure that's probably not true now. It's probably not true this year. So, folks, we'll just give it another couple of minutes before we get started to just let everybody join in. In the meantime, please don't forget to put where you're from in the chat box, and please select the everyone option when you do that so that everybody knows where everybody's from. I think we'll have a good mix of people. We have Isha Yoga Center, Coimbatore, India. That's fantastic.
Excited to get things going here. Definitely, we've got an interactive show today, so you should definitely be learning some stuff too. We're gonna have a bit of fun.
With you on the call, that's what I was hoping for too. So that's good.
yeah, of course. Oh, Germany.
That's good. Germany, actually, so I'm in Bangalore, India right now. That's one of the places where we are allowed to travel finally.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think gotta plan something.
Yeah, my partner's actually from Germany, so
okay.
I know a little bit of German, but definitely not enough to get me by. So this webinar is going to be in English, guys. Just as
okay, good. Okay, I think we'll give it just another minute, folks, before we get started, and everybody joins us. And yep. So just kind of a heads up. There's a Q&A section, of course. So please feel free to put any questions you may have as we go through the webinar in that section. If the question is relevant to what we're talking about at that moment, I'll of course interrupt Nigel and I'll naturally ask him about that then and there. If it's unrelated or if it's something that needs to kind of be addressed with full attention, then we'll take it up at the end. We are also doing a couple of very interesting giveaways. So please, of course, stick around till the end of the conversation so that we can give those things away. And yeah, so yeah, just another minute before we get started.
Yeah, make sure you stay until the end, guys, because we've got some good giveaways. And the other thing is with the growth hacks, there's going to be 5 different growth hacks. I'll save the best one till last. So
I think should we get started and we'll let people join in as we go? What do you think, Nigel?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm easy. I'm good to go. If you want to give
Okay,
it another
awesome.
minute, I'm fine. I'm good to go.
Okay, awesome. I think we can kick it off. Well,
Yeah,
first of all, Nigel, thanks a lot for doing this. Thanks a lot for taking the time
no
to
worries.
kind of hop on and walk us through everything you've got. Ladies and gentlemen, so as far as Nigel and his team goes, an amazing set of people, of course. I know them, of course, from the fact that they've already scaled more than 41 direct to consumer brands, which is a lot actually. That's actually a massive number. So that's a lot of experience right there. And a lot of them, ranging between 6 and 8 figures. Some of them were at 6 figure, and then they've kind of gone to the 7, 8 figure mark. So a lot of good experience there. And the goal for us with such webinars is to add as much value as we can. We also invite our own clients to such webinars so that they can learn from what our partners have to say about different aspects, about growth, about e-commerce in general. So I think worst case, I really hope you guys walk away with some really good information from the webinar itself. And once again, Nigel, thanks a lot for finding the time for doing this.
Yeah, of course. An absolute pleasure.
Awesome. So I'll begin with, of course, very quickly kind of talking about why we chose to do this in the first place. I always like to kind of first set context of why we decided to talk about growth hacks this time around. Well, one of the big reasons was the webinars that we've done in the recent past. We've always spoken about highly investment intensive ideas. So there was one that we did one about the launch method, the gated launch method, which kind of needs its own effort to get done. And almost all of these, all of the hacks or the ideas for scale that we've discussed on our webinars before this have been they've of course been very high impact. So they're all, and I if you've not seen our older webinars, I recommend you go and check them out, of course. But they've all been very investment or time intensive. With this, however, because of Nigel and his team's insane experience, we wanted to talk about stuff that can instantly be done, and second, does not cost a bomb. That's really what the goal was. And yeah, so I think Nigel was kind enough to put together 5 really solid things here. There's of course some fundamentals that we'd like you to focus on before we get into them, so I'll let Nigel walk you through them. And really speaking, the goal is in the next 30 to 40 minutes, you'll have 5 actionables to walk away with, 2 giveaways to walk away with by the end, and then we'll go from there. And of course, as I said, please don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A section. You can also put it in the chat. We'll take it up then and there if it's relevant to what we are talking about. Otherwise, we'll take up questions towards the end. And for everybody who's just joined us, please feel free to put where you're from, the country, the city you're from, so that we know where this group's from entirely. And yeah, so Nigel, over to you. I'd want you to take. I'll just stop sharing so that you can do that. And
Sure.
Yep.
Let me just share my screen.
Absolutely.
Let's get down to business. So yes, thank you so much, Shakir. It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on. Hi, everyone. It sounds like we've got a global audience today. Fantastic you can be joining us. And for anyone watching the replay, hi to you as well. So yeah, like Shakir said, just to clarify, we're going to be providing you with different growth hacks that you can implement in your e-commerce business. This is obviously for a founder audience that don't cost a bomb, and you can implement right away and they're going to drive more revenue. So starting with the foundation, which is obviously the website, we like to call it the ecosystem. So just so you know what I'm talking about. And then how to drive traffic into that ecosystem. That's what we do at Alpha Inbound. And then how to make sure you get profit on the back end. We're going to be talking about that. So there's going to be 5 different growth hacks we're going to go into. But just before we get into that, if anyone's ever been to a webinar before, I'm sure we've all been to one of these and we've been put to sleep. And from my side, just on a serious note, when I was at university and I was at school, I often sat through these long seminars and lectures that put me to sleep. And to be honest with you, the academic side wasn't really for me. I'm definitely more, in terms of applicable knowledge, business is definitely more suited for me. So I always said to myself, I don't want to bore an audience. So apart from you taking away, learning something today, I also want you to have some fun. And I think I just wanted to mention as well, just before we get into this, just something to touch on, obviously the pandemic over the last 18 to 24 months. I think that's taught us something that's more important than anything that I'm going to mention today. And that's that we only get one life and it is really precious. So let's have some fun. Let's enjoy ourselves at the same time. And also remember, you only get out what you put in. So if you interact with us in the chat, we'll be able to provide you with even more value. You're investing your precious time today. So let's make sure it's as valuable as possible. So speak up, be counted, and any questions you have that are relevant to obviously the topic of conversation, we'll do our best to answer them. Is that fair enough, Shakir?
Absolutely, 100%.
Great, right. So let's go full steam ahead. And like I said, ask any questions as you go along. So as Shakir touched on, just going to touch on this briefly. Alpha Inbound, what do we do? Who's leading the team? So I'm the Chief Growth Officer, Nigel Thomas. I'm based in the UK. Josh, our CEO, is based out in the States. We've got a remote team, and we help direct-to-consumer brands drive growth through Instagram and Facebook advertising. We're doing a little bit of testing on TikTok right now, but that's our core service offering. And we've helped 41 partners, and we're working, to be honest, these numbers actually need updating. We've been generating a lot more recently as I've come on, and I'm really here to drive growth for the team. So, we know what we're talking about with this stuff, and I've got some really up-to-date ideas post iOS 14, especially on the Facebook side, that are really going to be able to help you guys out. So like I said, if you've got any questions as we go through, just make sure you ask. But the first point of topic is all about building the ecosystem. So obviously this is really the website, right? And I think I'm going to pass it over to Shakir in a second, because he's going to be able to touch on, because on the left-hand side, usually what we see from our partners, that's what we want them to focus on in terms of the trust, shipping, speed, payment processing options, making sure there's no invalid discount codes, and then obviously the back-end infrastructure, email marketing. Because let me just point out, we're going to talk about different strategies to get loads of traffic to the website. But if we bring the highest quality, cheapest traffic into a broken ecosystem, there's nothing we can do. And we can be the best media buyers in the world. It's not going to make a difference. So you need to get the infrastructure in place. And obviously that's what ConvertCart can help you do. But just quickly on the right-hand side, the partners that we work with, these are the benchmarks. So these are the really important metrics you need to be focusing on. So obviously the bounce rate, less than 20%. Conversion rate, if you can get it between 5 and 10%, of course, it does vary somewhat, but these are good numbers to be aiming for. Add to cart rate, something a lot of people don't look at. If you get that up, obviously that massively impacts the conversion rate. Average order value, that does vary somewhat, but using different upsells, you want to drive that up. And then to be honest, if you're less than 50% margins on direct to consumer on Facebook and Instagram, it's going to be really tough for you. So you want to do your best to be above 50%. But Shakir, you might have some different things that you want to add. Obviously, what ConvertCart do, and the detail that you.
I think less about ConvertCart, but really what you're saying makes complete sense. We've worked with a lot of brands that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on driving traffic, and all of that money kind of goes wasted, for different reasons. But really speaking, I think just focusing on a couple of metrics here, your conversion rate, your bounce rate, making sure those are solid, really goes a long way. It helps improve ROAS. It helps improve the signals you're sending to Google, and helps you rank better. It helps you naturally make more money off of new customers. It also helps you with improving conversion rates for people who are repeat customers for you. So there's of course a lot of value there, but I think the only thing, there's email marketing there as well. I thought that was missing, but that's kind of the other thing, which is sort of a precursor to all of this, having a very strong email marketing strategy, which is something that we have started to focus on over the last year. And for almost all of the brands that we have spoken to, we are actually, I was actually surprised to see how many businesses don't drive at least 20% of the revenue from emails. I think that's a solid benchmark to have. That's one number that's probably not on the slide right now, but if you're not driving at least 20% from emails, and it could easily be 30%. So for the businesses that we know we work with, they're driving 30% of the revenue from emails. But I completely agree, getting fundamentals right is most important. So if any of this stuff is not working, so any of the other hacks that Nigel's going to walk us through today, I don't think they're going to matter. if this is not going to work out. So I completely agree with you, of course.
Yeah, so it's so important to get this stuff sorted out. Just you'll just be wasting money otherwise. So make sure you talk to an expert who knows what they're talking about before you start scaling up whatever customer acquisition tool you're going to be using. And you'd be surprised, like some of these things are actually quite simple to change, especially, you know, most people just have abandoned carts on email. Just get some proper flows built out. It's not actually as complicated as you think. You just need to put the time and effort in and talk to people who know what they're doing. So now we can get on to the bread and butter of what we do. So before we just dive into the hacks, a lot of founders seem to be having this question, which is, are Facebook ads dead post iOS 14? Now, I just want to make it quite rational because that's usually what I do when I talk to founders. Facebook have 2.8 billion users, right? And you can see some other stats across there at the bottom, 38 minutes average time spent on the platform per day, 17 years since Facebook launched. That's making me feel quite old. And 18% of US adults actually made a purchase through Facebook in the past year. So the point there is they've got trust now. You know, for example, TikTok, they don't have that trust yet. So the other point being 2.8 billion users, not even to mention the 1 billion on Instagram, and then obviously 2 billion on WhatsApp. And the fact is that Facebook's core revenue driver is advertising. So, you know, the Republic company, they need to make sure their shareholders are happy. So the answer to that question is obviously Facebook ads is definitely not dead. And it continues to be today probably the best customer acquisition tool. It drives, again, people on this call, you might be doing YouTube, you might be doing Google, but as we see across the partners we manage, it continues to be the number one acquisition tool on average overall, and it drives a lot of the other channels. So you just need to bear in mind that you need to be really good at this now. And talking through some of these different hacks today, I'm going to give you an idea of the kind of level of detail that you need to go to from a company that do this day in, day out. So like I said, make sure you've got any questions, but just check in. No one's fallen asleep yet. Everyone's good to go. We're ready to get started on the growth hacks. Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's do
it. Right. So the first hack is Facebook is definitely not dead, but return on ad spend just might be. Now, I appreciate you can still use this as a guide, but to give some context, and other people might have noticed this, if you're spending quite a lot on Facebook, that obviously the attribution's all over the place right now because of the Apple issues. Now, some of our accounts actually have been under-reporting up to 80%. And, you know, we're spending up to 7 figures in ad spend a month. So you can imagine what kind of mess that's causing on the back end. And that's basically driven us to a decision, which is essentially switching to a different attribution model. And this gives complete control where you don't now have to rely on third-party platforms anymore. And it's called MER, or marketing efficiency ratio. Some people might also coin it blended ROAS. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's essentially really simple. You take the marketing budget. So let's just assume it's for one acquisition channel because we can get complicated, but let's keep it simple because good business is simple business, I always like to say. So you just take the marketing budget, let's say it's for Facebook, and you just have that over the store revenue. That's literally as simple as it is. And I also just want to point out at this point that obviously everyone's making a big fuss now post iOS 14 about the attribution. Prior to iOS 14, Facebook was never 100% accurate anyway. So we always had about 10 to 15% that wasn't attributed. So it's about time you switch to something where you can control everything. And yes, it can get more complicated if you're using different channels. But one thing I would say is, like I said a minute ago, make sure you understand the relationship between, for example, Facebook and Google. Because we see with our partners, we're driving a lot of growth in from Facebook and it drives the Google searches. So make sure you understand that relationship because it can get complicated. You know, don't just think if you've got one agency doing Google, one agency doing Facebook, that you want to turn everything off on Facebook because you could start to see some pretty drastic effects if you do that. So understand that relationship. But just back to this, in terms of ROAS, obviously we know this. By the way, this is one of our partners on the left-hand side. I'll come on to that in a sec to give you a live example. But just to make this real simple, we obviously know how ROAS works. 500 spent on Facebook, 1,000 back in platform purchases, that's 2 ROAS, 2 return on ad spend, right? Then with MER, marketing efficiency ratio, let's coin that differently. It would usually be more store sales, right? On the actual shop. Let's just say it's Shopify in this case. A lot of our partners use Shopify. I know people on this call will be using different platforms, but it's the same thing. It doesn't really matter. So spend 500 on marketing, then 2,000 stores and store sales revenue would be 4 MER. We can do a percentage, so it'd be like 25%, but we just tend to find with our partners, it's easier just to do the ROAS model. So that's what we stick to. We make it real simple, control everything in-house, and long-term, you get the control back. So that's something that's really helping, and we're switching to with all of our partners. Now, here's an example of a partner we just brought on the left-hand side, as you can see. So within 3 weeks of us coming on board, we added 10% to the store revenue. Now on Facebook, it was underreporting like 70, 80%. So if we hadn't agreed up front the expectation that we were going to track with MER instead of ROAS, obviously that would have looked like we've been doing a terrible job. But in this person's company, we were the only variable really that had switched. The fact that we'd taken over the accounts and started managing them. So as you can see, that could have caused a lot of issues. And to be honest, if you're using an outside agency, you want to be switching to something like this because it's going to save you a lot of time. Otherwise, you're going to be going back and forward. You're going to be spending so much time. And I appreciate there's third-party tracking tools out there. We do use some of them ourselves. But if you want to make it simple and you're at lower levels of spend where that's not necessary, then just switch to something where you can control it in-house and you don't have to rely on the third-party platforms anymore. So yes, just to wrap it up, 1, if you work with an agency, redefine expectations. It will save everyone time. And 2, take control by having the long-term in-house attribution system. MER, it's going to help. You need to figure it out specifically for your business if you've got different channels, but take it in-house, take back control. Don't rely on third parties. Is that all making sense, Shakir?
Sorry, I was just attending to the chat there, but yes, that makes complete sense. I know this is a really top level metric, and it's going to transform the way you look at your own numbers. So I think a good exercise is after the webinar, go back, take a look at your MER for the last 3 months, and you'll truly know how the org performs as opposed to, just looking at one channel and in a microscopic way, just looking at ad spend and then return on ad spend, because there's a lot of other money you spend and a lot of other money you make, and attribution is never going to be, it's like, you can't trust it. There's zero trust there, actually.
Sure. Yep. Have we got any questions right now? Or are we good to move on to the second hack?
No, there's one about an older slide, so I'll just take care of that in chat. Keep going.
No worries. So this one, we're going to have a little bit of fun. So just hope everyone can see this. Now, for one of our partners, this is actually Disney that I'm using. As you can see in the bottom right, we just pulled it out from Facebook ad library. But this is just an example of content that we'd be putting together for one of our partners to give you an idea of what goes into actually testing on the back end for paid social. So I just want in the chat, if everyone could just give an idea, how long do you think that this amount of content, by the way, it's 60 different pieces, how long do you think that this would last for? In terms of for your marketing side before you needed to refresh? Be really interested to hear people's answers. Then I'll let you know.
You said the question is, how long would it take before you need to refresh everything?
Yes. How long would it take before that amount of content would need to be refreshed and our graphic designers or whoever you're using would have to put out new stuff onto social media? How long do you think?
That's a lot of content, to be honest. Month.
Gone.
we have one answer saying a month, maybe.
A month. Okay. Yeah. So for most agencies or obviously e-commerce brands, that would be probably like at least probably a quarter or 2 quarters of the year. For our team, that's 2 weeks worth. So we need to be refreshing after that amount, which is 60 pieces after 2 weeks. So we're putting out at least 5 a day. And again, yeah, sure. Obviously, when we're testing, we're finding creatives that are really good. But just to give you an insight into how much, sorry, you said something.
No, I was saying, right. I mean, there are answers saying 6 weeks, 3 to 4 months, depending on how detailed the content is.
Yeah. So obviously we'd have a mixture of short form and long form, just to give an idea. That was just an overall bird's eye view as a representation. Depending on the brand, it does vary a lot, but on average, like 5 pieces a day. You've got to understand in 2021, content is king. And that's the reason why the second growth hack is you should look at hiring a graphic designer for your e-commerce brand. Now, either that or hire an agency which has in-house graphic designers like we do at Alpha Inbounds. Now, why is that really important? Because it means you can move at speed and precision. So if you're looking to hire a graphic designer, you can use different freelance websites like Upwork or Fiverr. You just need to make sure they know how to do direct response content. So I don't know if anyone knows the difference, but your average social media post is completely different to direct response. Direct response is put together, Ogilvy back in, years ago, basically came up with this philosophy. There's a lot of different marketers out there who have been, there's been an evolution is what I'm trying to say on social media, but it all comes back to direct response is what actually drives sales. And direct response content is certainly different to just social media posts. So you need someone who understands that. Otherwise, you're just going to have a load of content put together that's not going to drive sales, and you're probably going to be wasting more time. So just to caveat that, that's why you might need to look for someone who's more professional with that experience. But trust me when I tell you, it's going to massively help. You need to really have it in-house or work with an agency who has it in-house so you can have that speed and efficiency, because you need the quality, but you also need the volume to get out 5 pieces a day, be testing relentlessly.
Right.
Is that all making sense?
100%. As a matter of fact, I can kind of vouch for what you're saying, because I remember when we decided to start marketing this webinar, you were like, hey, you know what, if we had more time to market this, we could do like 20, 25 videos separately, A/B test all of them against each other and really go crazy. And to me, that sounded like a crazy idea in the first place, but makes sense.
Yeah, but just again, one caveat, if you've got a low level of spend, obviously if you're spending $10 a day, that's not going to work, right? I mean, you've got to understand that with Facebook, for example, you've got to have 50 conversions a week on an ad set to be fully optimizing it. And if you're not getting that, it's almost like driving a Ferrari at 50 miles an hour. That's the analogy I always use. If you want to fully optimize on Facebook, you need to be getting 50 purchases. So all you've got to do for that is obviously take your cost per acquisition and times it up to work that out. And as you can imagine, most cost per acquisition is like $20, $30. You've got to be spending a fair amount. So don't think that you need to be putting together 60 pieces of content together if you're spending $10 a day. I'm just talking about when you're fully optimizing on the algorithm. And as we get to that Q4 period, I assume some people on this call are watching the replay of this webinar will be spending, above 15,000 a month. And that's how what you need to do to maximize the algorithm. So let's move on to the next one, which with that in mind is testing. Now, on the right-hand side, to give some context here, basically Josh, our CEO, who heads up the fulfillment, essentially coins it flywheel testing. So when I was putting this presentation together, I literally typed into Google flywheel, and that's literally what came up. So I went back to him and I was like, Josh, that's what a flywheel is. Do you think we should maybe change our terminology here? But we're just going to stick with it. We're going to run with it. I'm going to give you an insight into why it's obviously about the constant cycle of testing, but I just thought that was funny, so I'd share that with you. And so, yeah, essentially for the testing side of things, it's a framework of 3 main things. So you've got research, the actual testing itself, and then the feedback loops. So when we start with a brand, but I'll just say it from our side in terms of our partner journey to give you an insight, because you need to be doing so much more than just the standard A/B test. And that's why this is the third growth hack. So we'll get access to all their brand information, the scope of works, their brand voice, whatever it might be, the manifesto they give us. But then we start digging in and doing actual research, understanding the pains, the emotions, what the audience needs are, really understanding it. And the idea here is to understand the audience better than any of their competitors. And this is a relentless pursuit. This never should stop. So as ever running your ads, if it's in-house or outside your customer acquisition, make sure they put the time in to understand your audience. It's so critical. And from that, you can just understand, obviously, the copy and stuff, you can trigger different emotions. And so many people just don't do this. So Then what you want to do, obviously, once you've done that initial research, or what we do is we'll put that into testing. So we're going to be testing lots of different ad sets. You've already got an idea from the content side in the last slide, how much we're going to be doing. But that's one part, the content. You've got the copy, you've got the ad strategies. Don't want to get too technical, but what I'm trying to say there is you can imagine the amount of combinations we're putting together. And then once we actually find one winning combinations, because we want to test those at low levels of spend, you then want to scale it up to high levels of spend in your cold prospecting campaigns. But you need a strong feedback loop in place. So at our agency, Alpha Inbound, we've got direct response copywriters, we've got in-house graphic designers, and we've got paid media buyers. So they're all working in a close collaboration in what we call a pod. And essentially that feedback loop is continuous. It's happening all the time because they need to know what's working, what's not working. And then eventually you put together this formula for the brand, which is, that strategy for the brand. And then you keep adding to it over time. But it's called flywheel because this never stops. What most brands and agencies will do is they'll find things that work and then they'll just run with it. They'll put all their spend in there and it'll be almost set and forget. What I hear a lot in the industry, which is crazy and disrespectful in my opinion. And then guess what? Facebook will change the algorithm, then it all goes out the window. Then what are you going to do? You're left unstuck, your customer acquisition's dried up, and you've got all sorts of logistical issues in the back end. So you need to, if you're spending a lot of money or planning to, you need to have someone who understands how to actually do testing. And I think, Shakir, you can also vouch for this because this is also the case on the website as well as obviously bringing traffic to the website.
That's very, very true. In fact, I'd say 40% of the effort has to go into just kind of finding what to fix and just kind of doing the research and making sure that you nailed down exactly what you're after and then kind of have that loop going. So I agree with you 100%.
Cool. So yeah, we've got 2 hacks left now. So has anyone got any questions at this point? I'm going to go on to the last 2. Like I said, I saved the best one till last. It's really going to help you out and it's definitely going to be driving you a lot of revenue if you implement it so far.
So there are a couple of interesting questions, but I think we'll take it up at the end because they need a conversation in itself. So let's keep going.
That's absolutely fine. So the 4th one is standing out with unique offers. So everyone's doing offers these days, right? And this doesn't matter if you're running Google ads, YouTube ads, Facebook, Instagram, whatever your customer acquisition channel is. Most people on the left-hand side, we've got, and this is the same brand. It's 2 different offers to show you the difference. You've got your normal percentage off discount offer. And obviously, as we move forward to Black Friday, this is going to become more and more important. Now, on the right-hand side, we've got what we call a value add offer, because this is something that's standing out. It's more unique. The fact is that obviously they're adding something else to the offer, which is adding more perceived value as opposed to just the standard percentage off. The idea here is you need to stand out in your market. Now, to be honest, I did more research. I've come across them a lot. There's a lot of really unique offers out there. You could get even more unique than this, but often complementary products. If you buy this, you get this kind of product free with it. You want to be thinking of those kind of things to really stand out in your market because everyone's going to be doing the percentage off thing. And of course, I think it's really important to note you need to understand it has to fit within your margins, which, like I said, why coming back to the whole 50% margin, if it's less than that, it's going to be a bit of a struggle because you need that wiggle room really to be able to do these kind of front end offers and get people into your ecosystem. And then, as we've already touched on, you already know, for example, within the first 60 days, the attribution that you're going to make up. But have a think about how you can get some unique offers going. Think with your team, look at your margins, but put together unique offers that are going to make you stand out in your marketplace and then be unique about the way you advertise them. So get, UGC, user-generated content, get your customers involved with this process and just have some fun with it. But start getting things ready now before Black Friday comes. Don't do it last minute because that's what everyone else is going to do. So start now and be prepared. So have you got anything else to add from that, Shakir, from your side?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. But on top of that, one of the things that I always see my clients kind of talking about is offers also have a cost. So there's only so far we can go.
Sure.
And one of the key things that I always like to repeat when somebody says that to me is, yes, offers have a cost, but you've also got to kind of think about where you're giving too much away. Like there are cases where you're giving, say, a 40% off, where you could do the same thing in like a 20% off, and the conversion rate impact is the same, because that's what it really kind of cracks. So what in rare cases, what we help our clients do is A/B test between offers. So kind of run an email opt-in, for example, or run an in-cart offer at both 10 and 20% off, and then see which one kind of triggers the purchase. So you're not losing out more money on kind of giving a big offer away. Second is, normally, the intention here is not to give a larger discount or not to give a larger kind of benefit. The intention is to be more innovative with it and to stand out of, away from what everybody else may be doing. So that's really what the central point is.
Yeah,
so I agree with you.
And then within the next 60 days, you should already have a plan of action. Honestly, I mean, everyone talks about lifetime value. We like to think of it more within that 60-day cycle, because, especially for a new brand, when you're scaling things up, 24 months is a long time away. And obviously for forecasting, it's pretty complicated. So you want to know really within the first 60 days, again, it does depend on your product. Maybe you have a subscription model. It's going to be different, but know what your numbers are. Don't do any deals until you know your numbers inside out. Like, I don't need to tell you guys, but accounting side of e-commerce is so critical. So, right, we're down to the last hack. So this one is, like I said, I'll save the best till last. And it's definitely about the back end, making more profit. It might not be what you think it's going to be, but I promise you, if you utilize this properly and start testing it before Q4 and Black Friday, it's definitely going to drive you a lot of sales. So Shakir, should we show them?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. So the last one is SMS marketing. Now, I just want to touch on this because I have this conversation a lot with e-commerce founders. Whenever I mention SMS marketing to them or remarketing, I often get hit with the objection, which is, I don't want to annoy my customers. I don't want to be bombarding them on their phones. And I think I'm just going to damage my branding, and it's not going to come across as the brand image. And we don't want to put a bad name out there. So then I'll go back to them. I'll ask them, okay, have you tried it? Have you done a survey to ask your customers? And usually the answer is no. So why not roll the dice? I'm challenging you today to actually look into it. Look into the stats behind it, because I've got some stats here which shows that it's definitely an avenue you need to be looking at, especially right now after COVID. The fact that people are spending even more time on their phones, you really need to be looking at this because it can add a lot to your back end. Now, just before I dive into this in the stats, it's really important to point out this is not to replace email marketing or any other avenue. This is to add to it. Like Shakir said, you need to get email marketing in place first. Don't add the fancy bells and whistles on before you've got that down. Have 20, 30% of your revenue driving there, and then you can look at adding things like SMS marketing. The other thing to say is don't take my word as gospel and then just start blasting out for cold people who haven't consented to be sent texts, because that will definitely damage your brand image. So make sure you set the expectation with people that they've opted in and they can receive texts. And that way it's gonna be okay, but also start small, start testing small. But what I'm talking about here, it's not just about abandoned carts, because I'm assuming some people on this call might already be doing abandoned cart text, SMS. You can also do campaigns. And again, don't take your email marketing campaigns and then go and stick them in SMS, because that's definitely not going to work. It's a completely different channel. It needs to be straight to the point. Just think, if you're receiving a text, what would you want to see? It direct, straight to the point. And it's obviously going to be a much shorter campaign. But there's just some statistics here from ZipWhip, who are a massive company in that space, that are showing us they did some surveys, and 58% of people say that texting is actually the ideal way for businesses to reach them. So don't knock it until you've tried it, is what I'm trying to say. I've already touched on the point. People are spending more time on their phones now. And then the last one, which is crazy, is that only 26% of businesses send promotions, discounts, and coupons via text. So beyond, the abandoned carts. And that's not even including, that's not just e-commerce businesses, that's all businesses. So for e-commerce specifically, direct to consumer, it's going to be even lower. So think about that as a massive opportunity now. And what I'd recommend is start testing small now before Q4 hits and see what works for your brand. And then as you get obviously towards Black Friday, you'll know what to do. So when you get that massive amount of traffic and the buying intent switches, you'll know what to do for your texting campaigns and you'll be able to add it into your arsenal. So you're good to go. And guess what? You'll have more money to reinvest back into the customer acquisition, meaning you can spend more to acquire each customer, meaning you can beat your competitors in the newsfeed. Because remember, Facebook is an auction system at the end of the day, as all the other platforms are. So yes, that's pretty much that growth hack. I don't know if you've got any questions specifically, anyone, or Shakir, you want to touch on any parts of that?
So especially with the SMS and emails both, I think the timing also would be ideal. You are, leading up to the holiday season soon enough. And this is kind of the time to build a list, get the consent from as many people as you can so that you can hit them with the right offers at the right time. Also, as you rightly said, ad real estate is going to get super expensive. It gets more expensive each year around that time of the year. And it's harder to reach the right kind of people no matter what you do. So I think this kind of gives you an extra channel to go after. Needless to say, as you rightly said, email is kind of a prerequisite to doing this, because if you've not cracked that, I think you're kind of losing out on a fundamental. So even if an SMS does get you a click, a site visit, and then you're not giving them a great experience on the site itself, and B, another opportunity, another way, a softer way to kind of engage with them, then it becomes an issue. So I think SMS is, I come from a place, where SMS has been around, SMS marketing has been around for years. If you actually come, I don't know how many of the people in the audience have traveled to India, but if you do travel to India and you get a new phone number, you're going to get a promotional SMS the next day from when you get it, without ever giving your phone number to anybody ever. Mm-hmm. That's how crazy it is here. So, I know how it was when all of this just began, and we used to buy things off of links in the SMS and so on all the time. So this is, the awareness is still, on the lower end. Only about 26% businesses, of course, as you said, are even doing SMS marketing. So it's kind of a good time to attack that for sure.
Yeah. And the only other thing I'd say with that is it's because it's actually working for the partners we work with. Pretty much all the partners we work with, the ones who aren't using it, we recommend it. And often they're extremely surprised because, like Shakir said, it's been around for ages, but it's often very underutilized. You just need to be very strategic about the way you use it, but it's definitely going to add more profit to your bottom line. So use it, take it, test it for Q4. Remember, preparation breeds confidence. So get going now. So Absolutely. That's pretty much it on the hacks. Let's go towards the questions.
Absolutely. So there's one interesting one which I want to take up first by Alison. Oh. And what she says is, and this is about the MER, the new metric that we're trying to kind of introduce to the audience here. So what she says is that MER, it looks like MER seems to forgive Facebook for not performing as well as it did before the iOS 14 update. Basically, you're looking at a larger metric, so you leave looking at Facebook's or ROAS, in a more microscopic way. So do you think that, basically we end up obfuscating, low performing ads if you look at MER as a metric? What do you think about
that? Well, I'd actually challenge you back, Alison, because how do you know they're low performing when the attribution's not accurate? So that would be my point back. And what I would say is, like I said earlier, Facebook was never 100% accurate anyway. It was always, even 2-3 years ago, it was about 10 to 15% underreporting. So, at the end of the day, the business owners I speak to want to make sure all that money's obviously been spent properly. What I will say though is I do reason with you if you're spending money on lots of different channels, and that can get more complicated. But if you can obviously see, it depends how much, there's a lot of variables involved here. So I don't want to get too complicated, but maybe Alison, if she's there in the chat, she can respond with how many other channels she's using, how much is she actually spending on Facebook, and then understanding that relationship is Facebook driving growth for other channels? Because that's also something that people don't forget. But obviously you don't want to spend when you're going into the red. I completely understand that.
True. And I think the goal with MER as a metric is to kind of remove attribution from the equation when you're trying to look at overall efficiency and pushing top line just as the primary goal, as opposed to, I mean, of course, we all want to look at channel level growth, but I think that at the end of the day, we all want kind of the top line to go farther further up as much as we possibly can take it. The other angle there also is, to some degree, I agree with Alison that it kind of, you're not looking at things in a microscopic way. But where I disagree also is, if you look at Google Analytics, let alone Facebook, even Google Analytics, the tracking script for GA gets blocked by most ad blockers, which means GA is able to accurately see only 80% of the site traffic that really visits you, and the remaining 20% is extrapolated. We are actually writing a really detailed blog / article on this in the next month, and that's what's for Google Analytics. So I think we can all agree that Facebook's script is it ranks even lower in terms of reputation as far as ad blockers go. So I am 100% sure that attribution for Facebook ads is screwed up. It's really bad for sure.
Yeah. The other thing is, Alison, there are third-party tracking tools out there, and some of our partners do use that. It just depends how much you're spending, because I wouldn't recommend it if you're spending anything less than, for example, $20,000 a month. Then it's probably not going to be worth the investment. But yeah, I mean, as long as you know your margins, you're going to know pretty quickly. It depends who's obviously managing your ads and the relationship there, but you should know pretty quickly if you're losing money or not, if you know your numbers.
Absolutely. Yep. Now, there's another interesting one, which is by Sunil. I think he's in India. So this is about WhatsApp business as opposed to SMS. I completely agree with you. For markets where WhatsApp is big, I think it'll have an impact. But it's all about consent. If you try and hit people without consent, and they end up blocking you, WhatsApp really punishes you for that. So just keep that in mind while you kind of do that. The other one is from JD. Nigel, I'll let you take this one. This is about, can you segment and kind of be more granular about the whole SMS marketing approach? One example that he also gives here is where you could figure out a segment and figure out the kind of conversion rate for different time zones or different user lists, and then send different kinds of SMSs to those segments, much like what we do with email. But have you seen people doing more granular stuff with SMS marketing, Nigel?
Yes, 100%. But again, there's a lot of variables involved. So it needs to be adaptable to obviously what you're doing. I'd say it really depends on obviously how many people are hitting your site. You don't want to go too granular too quick. It's just like with Facebook ads. The more you segment, the bigger the audience is, the more you segment. That's the simple way to answer it. Yes, we've seen it very segmented, but that's when there's massive audiences on the platforms. If you just segment way too much, you've got to think about the frequency. So you can't hit people up all the time in SMS, then you will you will have problems. It's going to have diminishing returns. So it really depends on the scale of your operation, but also you want to be looking at different apps and stuff to use. There's lots out there. Klaviyo, for example, can do it, but there's obviously, I don't know, Shakir, you want to touch on any of them, but there's a lot of different apps out there that will give you all these different functionality. But what I would say is, if you've not started using it, start simple, just a couple of really simple campaigns, 1 or 2 step, and then just start segmenting from there. Don't go too complicated too soon.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And that's the segmentation piece is actually very true for emails as well. You rightly pointed out that most businesses end up investing a lot of time and energy in cart recovery emails and browse recovery emails and the standard stuff. And that's actually where it goes wrong. So strategy is a precursor to any of these channels really working out, much like Facebook. You've got to invest a significant amount of time in analyzing data and then finding the right segments and then attacking them with a really sort of airtight strategy. I mean, I think it's surprising for me, at least, if businesses don't drive like 20-30% of the revenue from emails and then, of course, other channels included, because that directly and instantly impacts your ROAS, the lifetime value that a customer kind of spends with you, the retention rate, there's a metric called lapse point, which both SMS and email can help you solve almost instantly, which is the number of days. So it's measured in the number of days, but that's the number of days or the point of no return of a customer. So if somebody is not bought from you for say 100 days, then they're never going to buy from you again. So looking at all of the purchase history and repeat rates for your entire customer cohort, you can figure out what the lapse point is for your brand, and you can figure out what is that point of no return. So you've got to be more aggressive with bringing people back, give them more reasons to come back, hit them using different channels and sources to make sure that the lapse point is pulled back as much as possible. So yeah, I mean, I think SMS and emails both would go a long way. SMS, of course, is special in its own way because it's very new. But yeah, I completely agree with that. So
I was just going to add to that as well. It's important to make sure before you go down segmenting everything to that level of detail, just like with the in-house graphic designer, you need to have the resource to do it. So if you make things really complicated for your business and then you've now got logistical issues you need to deal with, that's going to, it's going to create more problems for you. So if it depends on the resource you have someone in-house to be able to help you with these kind of things who can, like Shakir is saying, actually analyze that data properly, which is completely pivotal to making this work, whatever strategy you use, then go for it. But if not, you want to be careful about how complicated you get.
And in a lot of cases, costs follow. If you build a big SMS list, you're gonna pay for the list. You're gonna pay for the tool. You got to look up data on how many private aircrafts that are sold every year get sold again in the next year from then, because people don't realize that you've got to pay for just even owning an aircraft over time, and then so on and so forth. But yeah, that was of course helpful. So we just want to open it up for the audience. If there are any other questions, we can take them right now. We are almost at the end of the conversation here. Otherwise, I think we can just spill the beans on what we are here to give away from both the companies end.
Yeah, sure. If anyone's got any questions, I'm an open book, so please ask away. Otherwise, we'll transition into the offers at the end.
No, I think we're good. Let's move on. So what we're trying to give away is a couple of things. And Nigel, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, sure. So obviously on the right-hand side here, we've got our for inbound. I've touched on what we do. We're driving growth for e-commerce, direct-to-consumer brands with Facebook and Instagram advertising. Now, if you're interested, what we usually find the brands we're working with right now is a perfect time to get your strategy analyzed. And what we offer, what we've actually been offering for the partners we do work with, is we mandatory do an audit up front. Now, to give you an idea what this is, very high level, we get access to the ad account. We get access to the platform. A lot of our partners use Shopify, but that's not important. Just so we can map out that entire customer journey, all the way from a cold prospect, all the way through to a repeat purchaser, because we understand that, as I've touched on this webinar, it's about the entire ecosystem. And we're not going to work with someone if they haven't got a website which can handle a lot of traffic, because we really want to scale it. And we've got a direct response team who do just that. So we made it mandatory to make sure from our side, we're 100% confident we can deliver fantastic results. And since we've done that, it's massively helped us. And it's meant that our retention rates have gone up to 12 plus months, because we actually turn away business of people we can't work with, but we give them the advice, and long-term it's helped it. It's just creating a really trustworthy relationship from day one. So now what we thought is to get our name out there as an agency, we're actually going to offer these free of charge for a limited amount of time. And having that right now, having someone analyzing that entire journey, just before Q4, obviously we're 1 month tomorrow, September, time flies when you're having fun. Before Q4, get a strategy in place. And what we usually work on a 90-day period. Then obviously you've got that strategy going up to Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So if you head over to alphainbound.com/audit, there's actually a quick video there which will talk about our unique process. And then you click the button through there, you can book in a call. It'll probably be myself or my team. We basically understand some questions on a quick call, get the access we need. Within 72 hours, we can put that audit together. And then from there, we can talk about, how to actually get that strategy. We'll give you a document to take away that you can implement in your team. And if there is an opportunity that we can help you implement it, if we feel like we're confident that we could help you, we'd also suggest that, and we can have that conversation. So like I said, make sure you take advantage of it. alphainbound.com/audit. And I do also want to say thank you so much for taking your precious time to join us today on this webinar. And Shakir, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Nigel. This is fantastic. I think there's some good advice we've given to the audience here. As for the giveaway that we have on the table, it's really simple. I've been emphasizing on how your email needs to drive 20-30% of the overall revenue. If you're not doing that, we can instantly try to figure out why you're not doing that. So, I'm going to reach out after the webinar anyways, but you can also write to vijay@convertcard.com, and we'll then figure out why our email revenue may be lower. We'll schedule a call a week later to first kind of analyze kind of emails that are already going out for your customers, and then go from there. So this is going to be free advice. Naturally, we don't need any access, really speaking. And we just want to kind of give away some instant takeaways that you can go and implement to your email strategy and then make a lot of money, of course. That's that's really what we're all here for, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. This was I hope this was meaningful for you. We keep doing these webinars. We do at least once a month, sometimes twice. And the goal is to add as much value as possible to everybody who's attending. So Nigel, we're probably going to do another one later this year. I really hope we make that happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks a lot for being here, and thanks a lot. Thank you.
No worries. Take care. Have a fantastic day, and everyone stay safe. Crazy world out there.
All right. Bye-bye.
Stay true to yourself. Bye now.